So if you can pass just a couple of slides, let's go directly to the download page instruction. So please go here, download, you can go directly through the link, download this software, and also download the tutorial database that is also uploaded on your Canvas and your text file. This way you can follow through the tutorial really easily. And I hope most of you already downloaded, but if not, now you have the instructions. It's all on Canvas. So first, let's make a quick review on what is SQL. SQL or SQL, in the beginning, it was called SQL, but then it changed the name for SQL, that means Structured Query Language. Usually in places that are native English speakers, people say more SQL. In places that are not so native English speaking, people tend to say SQL more. But both are right, and you can say what you prefer. SQL is divided in 3 layers. So first of all, you have the data definition language. That's how you create your tables, define it, and connect these tables. We will see some of these by the end of the tutorial today. You have the data manipulation language, which is the most useful one that you will probably most use in your daily lives. And you have the control language that we are not going to see today, because it's how you give user permissions for the management of your own databases. Now, I will share my screen, and this time it will work. Oh my God, it's not working again. Can I send you the file?
I have them downloaded.
Okay, I will just copy it and send you by WhatsApp, because mine is different.
You can try them out.
This is already work. You have the okay. Sorry guys, I will use Matthew computer.
Hang on here for a second. So in the meantime, download the link. In the meantime, download the link that's provided on the PowerPoint and download SQLite so we can follow this workshop. And in the meantime, we'll figure out this technical issue really quickly.
Yes. Okay, guys, so I hope you had time to download everything, and we will start now. I will share the entire screen. So first thing, after you downloaded all that you need, you're going to find the SQL database that you downloaded, open with, and then choose the software that we're using. And with the text file that I sent to you, you can just copy everything, and then let's go to our tutorial start, and you can paste here. So first, a little instruction about the software itself. Here on the first tab, you can see database structure, which you have all the tables that are inside this database that I shared. The Uber database that we're going to use today is just and for learning purposes, so it's not a real Uber database, but I use this because I used to work in this industry, and I think it's really interesting because all of you guys have already tried the service. We have three tables here: drivers, riders, and rides. So make sure that you download everything correctly and you can see exactly the same stuff that we have here. Then execute SQL is the tab that we're going mostly to use today. And when you have the comments in green, like here with these two symbols before, it's because it's a comment, so it won't impact your commands. And when you see everything colorful here, it's because it's a real query. Okay, so let's start the beginning. The idea of these files should be a notebook for you, so you can be studying with it. You see the comments, understand what's happening, and then you can run the commands. And let's start with the SQL data types. So the idea of SQL is that you have the least mistakes as possible being done. So they have 7 types of data that can be inputted. And when you are creating a table, you determine what is the data type each column should have. So if it's a column of names, products, or status, you should use text. If you are going to choose whole numbers, for example, passengers, you should have integers and not floats. If you are talking about people, for example, be aware to use integers. If you're going to talk about floating numbers, decimal numbers, you should use the real data type. And if you're going to put images or big files like link styles, we have this called blob. And Boolean, it's binary integer, so basically 1 and 0. And if your SQL platform that you are using doesn't know what is Boolean because it happens, they will simply see its integers 1 and 0. And you have data and date type. The difference between these two is that the date only have month, year, and day, and the date type also have the timestamp. And let's start with primary keys. So the idea with a primary key is that you have this unique individual identifier for your roles. So examples of primary keys can be PSN, your student ID. It's basically this kind of serial numbers, and they are really important when we are talking about databases because they have 3 main functions. First of all, you use it to identify a role. So if we use for example, names to identify someone, you are really prone to have mistakes because a name can have different characters. Someone can write it wrong, and it's really hard to identify. So when you have these kind of numbers, a primary key, it's much easier to identify someone. Also, it prevents duplicates. So if I already have registered someone and I try to register the same information with all the same variables, you know that it's already a primary key for it, so you prevent duplicates. And you can also connect tables. We will see it right now in the tutorial how you connect tables as well, but sometimes you have tables with one kind of information and tables with another kind of information, and for your analysis you maybe need both kinds of information. So here, for example, I have the drivers table and I have the rides table, and if I need every passenger that had arrived with a driver, I need to join the tables to be able to patch this information to get. Okay, so now that you already know what are the data types and what are primary keys, we can start with our first commands. Okay, so this select everything from drivers will be your first SQL command. How you do to run a command, you basically underline the command that you want to play, and you press command return, command enter, or you can also use these buttons here, and then you're gonna see the results on the bottom of your screen. If you don't want to run everything, you can just select a part of your command. For example, here I had 2 lines commands. I can only select a part of it and run. and it will be only a,
The screen is not sharing. Can you check again? I think it just went off. Maybe you can share it again. Yeah. Yeah, entire screen. Yes, it should be back on. Perfect.
back.
Yes.
Okay. Do you guys want me to go back to
No,
primary?
it just went off. So
Okay.
you're fine.
So for example, here I have two-line comments, but if I only underline the first and enter, I will only be running this first line comment. And let's see the tables that we have here. So you have start to get familiarized with the database that you have. So for drivers, we have the driver ID. As you can see, it's unique. You have names, city, ratings, join date, and email. For riders,
A student asked to go a little bit slower over the explanation.
okay.
Yeah. Also, they didn't see the first part, but I think they mean they don't know how to enter the command. So you have to select it and then press enter.
Exactly. You underline it like this, and you can click to this button, or you can simply Control Enter, and it will work fine. And when you are writing your commands, for example, drivers, they will suggest something like this, so it's easier for you. Okay, does anyone know what this symbol means? Anyone that already knows SQL, why we're using this symbol? So basically, this symbol means everything. And when you are looking to a table, you don't necessarily want to see everything here. Maybe you only need driver ID and names, for example. But if you don't know yet what you need and you are taking a general look on the table, just use this star symbol and then you will check everything that is on this table. So let's put another example here. For example, oh, also it doesn't matter if you have caps lock, if you are spacing. SQL is not really sensible to this kind of thing. So let's run everything here with not capitalized letters. And let's choose name and city as the columns that we're looking for from drivers. Again, I underline, enter, and then I will see only these two columns that I'm stating here. That's the difference when you are using the star symbol and when you are using the columns directly explicit on your text. Let's run it to everything. So here, for example, I had a comma on my command, and if I try to run like this, it won't work. So you have to be really aware of everything that you are doing here. Let's just take a look on your riders table as well. You can see any other questions?
No, it's just asking questions about getting the right document to open. So I'll go again over that for a second.
Okay.
Go on to Canvas, download the text file, download the Uber database, and make sure you also have SQL installed. You do not open SQL, you open the database through SQL. So maybe you can show that right
Yeah.
here.
Oh, it doesn't.
Wait, it's taking a second. Yeah, you go through that and you select open in SQL. After that, you copy the text. That's also a file that's available on Canvas, and you put it on the window called execute SQL. And then once you paste it, you select this, you copy paste it.
And you have two tabs here. So you have the database structure with all the information on your database. And we are here on the tab execute SQL. And you can simply paste here everything.
And then you just paste it. You don't have to do anything else. And then your text should be green.
Everything that's green are comments. Everything that's not green is queries.
Yes.
Your file will not be necessarily the same as mine because I've made some comments now, but they are simply really similar. Any other questions?
Um, Yes. Uh, Thank you, Hichan, for answering the question. Um, I don't understand which to copy.
The text
So
file.
there's a text file that's available on Canvas. You will download this. You will open the text file. You will copy the content inside of the text file, and then you will paste it inside the SQL that is already opened through your Uber database. Those are the three simple steps.
Exactly. You copy everything and
Yes.
then you paste here on the execute SQL. It takes a while to load, guys. Sorry. Here on the execute SQL tab inside your software.
Somebody asked if you can go back to the underline and select. We will go back through it when we have the example exercise. So don't worry about that.
Yeah. But again, if you need, you only underline and then you Control Enter and you are going to run this command.
And you run it by pressing
Control and Enter.
Control and Enter, yeah.
Or you can use this button up here, which is the play, just like Spotify. It does the same. And as I explained it, for example, here, we have 2 lines. Wait, I'm waiting to load the screen for you. We have 2 lines, but if I select only the first line, I can run only this.
Yes.
Okay, no more questions. Everyone could download everything, right?
I think the downloading should be, yeah, everything should be good.
Okay. And does anyone know why, for example, here in rights, I don't have the driver's name? Any comments about it? Any ideas why I don't have every information in every table? Well, first, it's for data policy. So some users that are going to analyze my data cannot know the name, cannot know the address of my clients due to data policy. That's why the most used tables need to be anonymized using this kind of IDs, because with the driver ID or the rider ID, I can simply share it with my colleagues to, for example, if I have an error and I need to investigate, I can check with the IDs without sharing who is the person itself. Just to be sure, here we are running our select everything from rights. And we have 3 different primary keys here. So let's just be sure that everyone understands all of them. Ride ID is the unique identifier for every ride. So every ride needs a unique identifier. Driver ID is the unique identifier for the driver itself. So it's like their BSN, it's like their student number. Every driver have a unique driver ID. Here you can see that I only have one ride ID at a time. I cannot have more, for 2 of ride IDs for example. I need it to not have duplicates, but I can have duplicates of driver IDs because the same driver performs different rides, different trips. And rider, it's the passenger, the final passenger. This one also can have duplicates because again, the same passenger, for example, passenger 2 had one trip of 8 kilometers and one trip of 22 kilometers, as you can see here on the, the table. Okay, so let's start filtering. I don't know if you guys want to go back again to what's the star symbol. Oh, it's good. When you have like this, select star from drivers, I'm collecting everything that is on the table, all the columns. If I don't want all the columns, I simply write here instead of the star I use the names of the columns that I want to see. So in this case, I want to see name and city from drivers. I press enter. I will see only name and city from the table itself. Okay, so now you guys already have done your first SQL queries. You already understand a little bit. I need to have the select. I need to have the from. Now we will start filtering the information. So, okay, I know all the rights that I have here, but I need to make a specific analysis on canceled rights. Let's suppose you are an analyst at Uber and you're running this study of what kinds of rights are being canceled and why. First of all, you need to check what rights are canceled or not. What most people do these days, they will run this first command, download the table and go to Excel to make filterings, to make tables, and then to see what's happening. But it's better if you do everything in SQL, and you have much more ability to manipulate data in here than Excel. So let's run our first filter, which is where. You have to use where. And I want to see, select everything from rights where status is canceled. You can read like this, the query to be easier in your mind to think. Select everything from rights where status is canceled. Let's run. I have all the canceled rights here. When you are talking about status, it's a text, so I need the single quotation marks here in the beginning. Otherwise, it won't read. If I only put like this, for example, without the quotation marks, it will get an error because when it's text, you need to state it with the quotations. You can also use filters with numbers and with operators. So for example, I could look here for all so select everything from rights where fare is 15. Let's see, for example, if any ride had a fare of 15. You see that I don't reach an error, like the query successfully run, but I have no results. Why? Because none of my rides had the fare exact 15. But let's suppose I am making an stud that I want to see all the cheap fares. Then I will make select everything from rights where fare it's less than 15. And then you can see all the rights that were cheaper than 15 euros. Any questions? You guys are able to keep up until here? Okay. And with filters, you can explore as much as you want. So if you want more than one filter, you can also use like this. Select everything from rights where fare is more than 5 and less than 15. It also works. If I put the equal sign here, it also works. And I get until 15, not just 14.99, for example. What else? Let's see how to mix different filters. So here we use it and. So I will only bring the results that satisfies both filters that we added. In this case, rights that had the fare between these two values. But I can also use OR. When I'm using OR, the result will be published if it checks one of the filters or the other. So for example, let's run this. Select everything from rights where status is canceled or distance is less than 10 kilometers. And then as you can see here, I have some rights that the status is completed and some that the status is canceled. But all the rights that show up here that have the status completed, It's because the distance in kilometers is less than the condition that I put here, that is less than 10 kilometers.
I have a question here. When you add a filter, does it filter the table from before or from the whole database? From Edward.
The filter itself only filters the table that you are explicitly here. So remember, select, and I put all the columns, all the variables that I want to check. For example, let's put here, let me copy it. Select driver ID and there from right where status is canceled, and I run this, I only get the results from the rights table. So if we go back to our database structure, here it's my rights table, and as it is explicit after the from, I'm only getting results and filtering results from this table. If I want to see another table, I have to change here the table that I'm looking for. So select drive, let's change for everything. Select everything from, remember how many tables you have? 3 tables, drivers, riders, and rides. Drivers, passengers, and trips, if it's easier for you to understand. Drivers, riders, and rides. In drivers, I have driver ID and name. So if I want to filter from drivers, I need to put filters that work with this table. So if I run this, I will have an error because I don't have status in the driver table. Let's put the driver table here. Again, if I only select the first type, the first line of the text, I will only see the first line of text, the first line of comment. We can make filters here about names, cities, ratings, join date, what you want to see. Maybe let's filter according to rating. So I only want to see drivers that their rating is bigger than 4.5. And then I run, and then it works. Remember, you need to filter a column, a variable that's available on the table that you are looking for. Did I answer it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here, the same example. Oh, I used exactly the same example. Filtering drivers with the rating bigger than 4.5. And as you can see, when I'm using numbers, even if it's a decimal number, I don't need the single quotation marks. So specifically for numbers, you can only write here the number and it will work. But for text and date, you need the single quotation mark. And SQL always change the colors of things, so it's easier for you to spot if something is wrong.
Somebody is asking, Lucas, why are your queries also working without the semicolon at the end of the line?
Oh, so SQL is really not picky with this. So if I write everything without the caps lock, for example, so and I can jump lines, for example, from drivers. Let's see if like this it works. It works fine as well without the same colon, with undercapitalized words, jumping lines. I need all the commands here. I need the select, I need the from, and I need a valid table. If you have these components, your query will run, even if it's a little bit different from the best query formatting that you could apply. This is really different from Python. If you have experience with Python, in Python, if your query is like this, like one ideation bigger, it wouldn't run. But here in SQL, the language doesn't care that much about this kind of formatting. Any other question? Okay, so let's find drivers who joined after 2021, for example. This is a really valid search that could be useful for you if you were an Uber analyst and are running an analysis. And here, again, it results all the drivers that joined after this date. And also I can include order by. So if, as you can see, I don't have a clear order on the results that I'm getting here. So I can include another command in my query that's order by. And we will order by rating. So I want the least rated before. And then as you can see, it goes from Joe to Paul, from the least rating to the biggest rating. Oh, Rafaela, what if I want the opposite of it? I want first the biggest rating. Then we'll only add this word here and you invert the logic. So if you don't write anything here in the end, SQL will understand that you want it ascending. And you can also write here ascending like this, only ASC. But if you want descending, you really need to put it here so SQL can organize it for you. If you use it, for example, here we are ordering by rating. Rating, it's a number column. So SQL will understand that the list is the number 0, 1, for example, the list numbers, and the biggest it is. But if we're talking about a text column, it will understand that you should be following an alphabetical order. So A, B, C, it will follow this order. Okay, any questions until now? Now you guys already know how to run a query, how to check a table, how to filter, and how to order. It's already a lot of things.
Mhm. Please ask any questions right now in the chat. Do you have to know this for the exam? Yes, this will be part of your exam. You're not expected to code during the exam, but you will have to understand and interpret the commands and the results. And next week, the professor will share additional questions from, for example, last year or other recaps for the exam coming up. And this session is being recorded and also will be uploaded. Um,
Oh,
Jill says, I followed the same steps and received the same answer, yet in the bottom square it says execution finished with errors. If an execution is finished with errors, what are possible reasons for errors?
mm,
So mostly it's you're not using the right command or you're not using the right syntax. Um, Also make sure that you have downloaded everything correctly. You're using the right version of the SQL. It should work. The database and the text and SQL are universal, so there should be something that you're not doing properly.
yeah, maybe, for example, the floating numbers, if you're using a comma instead of dot, it can be a problem.
Mhm.
Also, if you are looking for a result that is not in the table, we can also bring an error. But if the execution is being finished, it's a good sign. You probably don't have necessarily a syntax error. But we can, during the break, check case by case.
Yes. Here, somebody sent a screenshot. We can check this for now. I would say just pay attention to the lecture or the workshop and follow, just understand the instructions. And if you're having issues with syntax errors, we can, during the break, we can check what are the issues that you guys have.
Exactly. And we are close already to the break time. So I'll just go 2 topics more, that's the calculations and the group by, and then we can have a break. So calculations. As I was telling you guys, the idea of SQL is that you don't have to download everything and go to Excel to make your analysis. So besides visualizing results, you also want to create calculations and really set up this kind of uh, uses in your query. So for example, we can sum in the queries. If I want to see the fair of all my rights, it would be my total revenue, right? So select sum and between brackets fair, because I only want to sum the fair column as total revenue. When I use as like this, it's because I'm renaming a column, a result, but it also works if I don't rename it, it's fine. So select sum fair from rights. Let's see. And then, as you can see, it's exactly like sum fair because I didn't rename it. And the total revenue that the company had during this time period that it's disclosed in the database that we have here. If I put the S here, total revenue, the only difference is that you see here the sum fair, right? Memorize it, and when I run again, it renames the column of results. Let's use another example that you are wanting to sum something, but you also want to filter. So this is the idea of SQL, that you have these different commands and structures, and the more advanced you get on it, the more power you have to combine them and make your queries really specific. So here we will check, select sum fair as total revenue from rights where status is completed. Okay, so now it's really similar with the previous command that we had, but now I want to see only the completed rights. As you can see, the result is a little bit smaller than the previous one, which makes sense. It's a good sense check. Okay, and you also can use average, and it will already make the algebraic average of the numbers that you're calculating. So select average between brackets. Remember to also use the operator followed by the column inside brackets. As average fair, again, I can name it or not, from rights where status is completed. And then I already have calculated here the average fair from rights with the average it's completed. If I change here and, for example, don't use this filter, I have a little bit of different values because the rights that were not completed probably were canceled and they only have the cancel fee this time. So the fare from canceled rights tend to be smaller than the fare from completed rights. That's why our average here without the filter, it's less than our average with the filter. And if I want to see, for example, for a specific passenger, so let's choose someone. Let's take a look on our rights table. Okay, so let's see rider ID 2. So we go back here, select average fare from rights where rider ID equals 2. And then you have the average fare for this specific rider. This is useful because you can run a lot of analysis here without having to download the database again. Okay, let's.
Before we continue, I have two questions. One from Jill. Could you explain the use of the as function?
Yes, so it's renaming. So here, select sum fair as total revenue in the results, it will be renamed as total revenue, even if I don't have a column in my database that is called total revenue. If I don't use the S, I will have the same result, but it will not be renamed here. Here it will only be like this, sum fair. And this is really useful because, for example, average fare, sometimes you want a final result that you can simply, based on a PowerPoint, for example, to show your boss, then you can have the perfect table already from here. You can just screenshot here and show to your boss, for example, without having to copy the results, create a table in your PowerPoint and name everything. You can rename them directly here using the S function. And as you can see, sometimes I use it with caps lock, sometimes not, and it works fine for both.
Maxime asked a question, why do we have as total revenue for some, but nothing for the average function? I think you just explained it, and it's also
Exactly.
possible to put it there, just depending on how you want to label your result.
Exactly. Here it's totally your personal choice on how you want to see your final result. Every time that you use an S function, it's just for renaming. But it's really important that if you create a table with an S function and later you will consume from this table, you have to declare the new name in here. So remember, for example, let's use this example. Select everything from rights. If I want to see only the fare, I have to say select fare from rights. And then it will work. If I am consuming here, instead of rights, a new table that I created using the rename function, I need to also use this new name here to search for results. This is a little bit more advanced. If you don't really get what I just explained it now, don't worry, we will create tables later on today and it will be easier for you to understand. Okay, so we already know the sum function, the average function, and now we will learn the count function. It's really similar to Excel, so I'm simply counting. And the good thing about the count function is that I can count text, I, I can count numbers, I can count binary variables. It only counts the row itself. I don't have to worry. If I put sum name, for example, it will break, but I can count names. So select count everything as total drivers from drivers, and then we will see the number of total drivers. However, you have to be really aware when you are using the count function, because for example, in our rights table, I have the same driver more than one time because the same driver makes multiple trips. And if I select count driver ID from rights, thinking that I'm going to check how many drivers I will have a problem here because the count will check all the times that I have a result for driver ID in this table. In other words, it will count all the times that a driver did a trip, which is every time. So in the end here, I'm counting trips. I'm not counting driver ID. You need to be really aware of how you're using the count function. And to help with this, you have this sub function called distinct that doesn't count duplicates. Then here's a really similar command, select everything. I will even get out the renaming so they are even more similar. Select count driver ID from rights. I will get the 18, as you guys already know. Select count distinct driver ID from rights. I only get 4. Does anyone know why here I get 4 drivers, but if I count from the driver tables, I get 5 drivers? Any ideas, guys? I'll wait some seconds to see. No ideas. Well, it happens because I probably have one driver that did not perform any trip. So he is registered as a driver in the driver's table, but he's not present in the rights table because he didn't pick up any passenger. Okay, I think we learned a lot now. Uh, we will have some exercises. So if you scroll down into part 4 of your text file, you will see here exercises. And we can start with exercise 1 and 2. They are really easy, but as we are learning a lot of things today and a lot of new things, it's really good for you to practice a bit to be really sure that you understood everything that have been said until now. You can do exercises 1 and 2. We will have a break of 15 minutes. I see you guys again at 4:05. Okay? Hope you guys are enjoying. Feel free to send in the chat any specific case questions. We will come back starting from the group by command here. See you guys soon. Hello, guys. We are back. Hope you had a good break to refresh the mind a little bit from SQL. Let's begin with the case that you guys reported here. So CC Young shared her screenshot with the errors. So the errors was caused by the semicolon used after the date time. Then SQL accepts a lot of things, but if you put a semicolon, it will break the query. So this was the problem in here. If you delete the semicolon, it will probably run smoothly. Okay, now I will share my screen again. How was the exercises? Could you guys do the first exercises? Any questions about it? Share with us. So let me, can they see the screen?
You have to share the whole screen. As a GoPro? Yeah. Yeah.
No? Okay. So we finished before the break here using the operators. I want to go back using this example before we enter the group by section. So if you remember, we built this query, select average fare as average fare from rides where rider ID equals 2, because we wanted to know the average fare for this specific passenger, that is passenger ID 2. And this is really useful, but let's imagine you are an analyst and you want to know the average fare for a group of riders or a group of drivers. For example, all the riders of Amsterdam. I don't know. So I introduce you guys to the group by function. Again, you keep only summing these functions. You can use select, you can use as, you can use from, you can use order by, all of them together. You just keep combining these different functions and making your query more advanced and more specific as well. So if I'm not grouping by and select city status and count as number of rides from rides, I will get a general result. If I group it by city, I will get the result of each city. So what I'm doing here, the group by is doing, is running the same query for each of the groups and listing the different results for you guys. It's really useful when you're going to make analysis. And instead of, for example, if I wanted to know the average fare for each driver, in this previous way here, I would have to run 3 or 4 queries with the same information, just changing the driver to get the different results. And you don't want to keep running these queries and noting the results later. So you can only group by rider ID, and it will give you the result of like this. We don't know the information. So how I fix it, I include rider ID after my select, so the rider ID column will be also show up here. And then instead of having to run 3 queries, I can only use the group by, and I will have the exact same information as the 3 queries would give me. Or if I want to filter here as well, to combine everything that we are learning, and then you guys can assemble it in your minds. So select rider ID from rides where, let's suppose, city equals Amsterdam, inside single quotes because it's text. And then you have the average fare from every rider ID in the city of Amsterdam, grouped by. Okay, let's go to another group by example. I want to see the fare of each driver ID to know how much my drivers are doing. And instead of average, as we were looking before, I want to see the sum of the fare. So the total revenue each of my drivers had. Then I have the driver IDs and I have the driver revenue. If you want to add another information about them here, let's suppose you want to see their email, just write email after the select. And when you run, what happened here? Oh, we don't have email in rights. That's why it didn't work. What we can use from rights? We can use status, we can use city. Yeah, we cannot use email, but we can use city. And then I run, and then no, each of my drivers, the cities, and the revenue they had, which is the sum of the fare.
Maxime asked two questions, just to double check if I answered correctly. What is the difference between count asterisk and count driver ID?
Okay, so here I'm counting all the results I have in the whole table. So just like, for example, select everything from rights. Give me the whole table when I make select, count everything from rights. It counts all the results that you have, so all the rows that you have. When you are counting, if you don't specify a column to count, it will only count the rows of the table itself. It will not double count the columns. So if I have 18 rows in the first column, 18 rows in the second, it won't sum it all. We will get the general rows, but you may have a column that have some new values, so empty values. If you count specific for this column, you have a different result for example, if you count for all the table.
And then another question from Maxime. Could I ask what is the difference between just rides and driver ID from rides?
I didn't get this one.
What is the difference between rides from driver ID? So these are different, these are different columns and therefore also different data points. So that's the difference. They're different things. Driver IDs are ID numbers
That are present in both the tables.
and rides is a different input. So
Exactly.
just think of them as separate things, not the same thing.
Just again, let's run all our tables. We have the table drivers. We have the table riders and we have the table rides. And they are all different tables with different information. So drivers, I have the drivers information and I have one row for each driver. It's like their subscription form, you know, it's like the result of their subscription account. For riders, again, it's like I'm seeing the description of all the passengers I have here. And on the table rides, I have the history of all the rides in the platform. And in this history, I have the ride ID, the driver who did it, the passenger that was in the car, and the details about this trip itself. So what is the distance, what was the fare, when the ride was done, the status, and the city. And it's really important to know that, for example, city from a ride can be different from the city that I have here in the riders, because this is the city that my passenger registered as they leave. But they may travel and have trip, the same rider can have a trip in a different city. Okay, guys, I'm running a bit because we have a lot of content. Now we are going to see joins. So remember, for example, when I was saying this example of the rights table, oh, Rafael, I wish I could know the name of the drivers in this table as well for my analysis because I really needed the name of the drivers here. You can have the exact same table with the name of the drivers using join. So join is the command that you use to connect different tables by a variable in common. We usually will use to connect these different tables the primary keys. So I can get the names from the driver's table and connect here to the ride's history by associating the driver ID. So I will ask, hey SQL, look to my driver's table, check the name for all driver IDs, and bring the names here to this other table that I'm searching. This is basically what join does. And join, you can have inner join or you can have left join. So in this example that I'm giving you guys, I want to input the name of the drivers here in the history of all the trips. If I have one driver that did not have any trip, when I do an inner join, I will not see this driver because what an inner join does, it only matches the results that are present in both tables. So if I don't have a drive, I have a driver in the first table and I don't have on the second, in the inner job join, I won't see this driver. But the left join will bring the second result even if it's not present and will simply be a blank result. It's kind of hard to understand theoretically. Let's try the exercises and the real examples and you guys can start understanding it on practice. So let's try. I'm making a real life example here for us to apply this. We just got the news that Paul, one of the drivers, has hantavirus. We must find all riders, all passengers that have traveled with him and their emails so that we can warn them. Okay, so first of all, we need to know who is this driver named Paul. When we are looking for a specific name, I don't have the driver ID. I only have the name of him. It's hard to make this like select everything from drivers where driver oh, where name equals Paul. Why this is not good? Because if Paul has two L's or Paul, I wrote it with a space, I will not be able to find it. So when we're looking, searching for a result with text, we should use this like. When I'm using like instead of the equal sign, I'm opening space to SQL match results that are not exactly the same. And if I run exactly the same thing, now I get the result because I'm using like instead of the equal sign. And you guys probably are asking yourself why these two comments are different because they are almost the same. Yes, I told you only the difference between the equal sign and the like. But if you see here, I have name and here I have driver dot name. What is this? The table is called driver. So it's up to you to choose if you want to refer only to the column name or if you want to keep the table dot column name. Basically this, all columns can also be found if you put the table they are inserted before the name. This is really useful when you start making joins with lots of tables and you don't know anymore which variable you are consuming from each table. So if you want to have a really clear query, it's good, and a long query, it's good to use this kind of formatting when you are going to search for tables. Okay, so if you guys already understood the like instead of equal sign, we will make our first join. So here, I already know that my driver Paul have the driver ID 1. So I can now work with driver ID that's much better to use than the name Paul. and I want to select everything from rights, where driver ID is 1. Okay, this is already know, but this line here we don't know. Inner join riders on ride dot rider ID. What we are making here, we are combining the table. So here I'm only seeing one table. I'm consuming everything from the same table. Let's go to this example. Select rider name and rider email from rides and inner join. Wait, I think this part. Let's go to this example. Yeah, because here we have a problem in this one, guys. Sorry. Yeah, look that we are combining the same tables here. It doesn't make sense. Sorry for it. You can ignore the first two examples until Paul here was right. But we will go directly here to this part. I'm really sorry.
We can update this on Canvas later.
Exactly. So here I want to create a table that uses some results that are in my driver's table and uses some results that are in my rider's table. Here I will just explicitly write how I want it. So I want the name that is on the driver's table. I want the name that is on the rider's table. I want the email that is on the rider's table. I want the date that is on the rides. So I'm using the three tables here. I want the date that is on the rides table, and I want the city that's on the rides. Basically, I want to know who is the driver, who is the passenger, what's the passenger email, when this trip happened, and where this trip happened. I'm combining 5 variables here, and I'm consuming 3 different tables. How do I combine it all? Using the join. So inner join drivers and rides table, where driver ID is the same, and inner join riders and ride table, where the rider ID is the same. So here it's what we're doing. Combine the tables drivers and rides, where rides driver ID equals driver ID.
I have a question. What does the distinct mean?
Oh, so we don't get duplicate results. If I run it without the distinct, it will run smoothly, but I can have the same result more than once. When I put the distinct here, I only get one time each result. Let's run, and then I have exactly how it's stated here. First, the driver name, our driver name named Paul that have hantavirus. Then the driver to contact, the rider to contact, it's the passenger that had a trip with the driver. The email, that's how I'm going to contact this person, when the trip happened and where the trip happened. So we can see that Paul mostly drives through Amsterdam, but he also had a trip with Sophia in Utrecht. Okay, so I hope you guys understand that that's why it's really important the primary keys in all my tables. So later on, I can create my own tables with one part of each of these different data sets and have my own personalized. Okay, let's suppose another driver has the virus and we want to check how many rides he got. Okay, so again, in the driver's table, I know his name, but I only can see how many trips he have done if I check the trips, the rides table, right? So let's look for the driver's name, the ride ID, and the ride city. From drives connecting through driver ID, where the driver is called name Pedro. And as we can see, Pedro didn't have any ride because the results here are null. If I change Pedro here for Paul, Paul had 1, 2, 3, 6 rides. and I have the exact ride IDs to identify the passengers. And you can do it with all your drivers. You just keep changing here the name. But remember that if you get a blank result, sometimes not because you have a problem in your code, it's because, as this example here of Pedro, he doesn't have any trips in the system. Okay, another way you can connect your tables with the join is instead of, you remember when I told you guys that you use the name of the table and the name of the column, so driver's table, driver ID column, you can create nicknames for it. These are called aliases. And instead of writing the whole table name here, I can only say table D, table R. But I have to state this in my code, knowing that drivers is D and rides is R. And then I connect these two tables and I get the name, the fare, and the city, combining the two tables where the driver ID is the same.
I have a question. So what is the main difference between inner join and left join?
Okay, so inner join, you only get the results that are present in both tables. And left join, you first write all the results from the first table, and then you enrich it with the results from the second table. So when we were talking about, for example, the driver Pedro that didn't do any trip, if I do an inner join here, let's use this example. I have no results. If I use a left join here, I get his name. Do you get the difference? Inner join, I will only get the results that are present in both tables. Left join is, for example, as I consulted the driver table before, got the result I need from this table, and then I enrich with the variables from the other table. And if it's not present on the second table, the enriched values will be empty, but I keep the left result that I got checking the first table. So this is the best example. If I use inner join here, I have no results because Pedro did any trip. But if I use left, I get a result because even if he had no trips, he's still present in my driver table.
I have a question. How, can you explain the implicit joins and aliases again?
Yes. So, for example, as you can see here, I'm combining two tables. I'm combining riders, I'm combining the table drivers and rides, but I'm not saying any join here. Why I'm not saying any join here? Because I'm specifically telling what column I want from each table. So let's do it like this. Instead of using the aliases, I will use the implicit join here without aliases. So instead of what we were doing before, that, hey, SQL, give me everything from driver's table. Here I'm telling SQL, I want from the driver's table the name, from the rides table the fare and the city. And to connect these two tables, use the driver ID. And when I run it, oops, didn't work. Sorry, guys. But let me check what happened here. But the idea is that before SQL creating the join function itself, people were doing the joins like this. And then they created the join, and we don't need to use like this anymore. We can simply do the join. Oh, I know what's wrong here, because I keep the aliases in the list.
I have a question from Veronica. Why does it say from drivers after after your selection if you're selecting columns from rights as well for the usual join functions?
Sorry?
What does it say say from drivers after your selection if you are selecting columns from rights as well for the usual join functions?
Yeah, so what the join is doing is exactly this. He's combining content from different tables in one only result. So I'm consuming here from the rights, but I bring this in the same. Oh, I know here what happened. Sorry, guys. But I'm consuming it in the same result. Rights, drivers. Yeah. So it's exactly what I'm doing here. I am consuming different columns from different tables, and I can do this. I can consume the from more than one table. What the join is doing is exactly this. But before existing the join, people started using like this. But the join is safer because you can put the left join or the inner join, but I think this is easier for you guys to understand the concept. So what the join here is doing, it's capturing one variable from each table, and you decide each variable from each table that you want and combining them in the same result. Did I answer? Could you guys get it? Yeah, joins are a little bit more complicated, but they are really useful because usually you cannot make an analysis only with the information from one table. So you will need to learn how to combine these different tables using a, a variable to connect them. In this case, we're using the driver ID.
Somebody says, I don't understand how does it know which one is R and which one is D?
Okay, so here we are using aliases. These two texts, these two queries are the same, exactly the same. The only difference is that the first we are using aliases, and the second we are not using aliases. I will explain what is the aliases. So you see here, rights as R. I'm creating a nickname for this table. That's how SQL knows that r.var should be consumed from the rights table. And doesn't have a problem if I'm using the R before explaining the nickname. SQL can still understand it. So aliases are creating nicknames. And how I create nickname, I simply, after explaining the table that I will consume, I use as and combine a name to be the nickname of this table. This is aliases, and you can use it in every query that you run. Okay, guys, I have 15 minutes to explain to you how to create tables. According to joins and aliases, you can go to exercises 3 and 4. They are really useful on this, and you have the answers from the exercises on the same file. So you go here to the bottom of the file, so exercises answer 3 and 4, and you can check some here. All of them are using joins. I don't have any example with aliases, but I can send to you guys. I will update everything and send you a version with aliases for you guys to practice as well. But if you're already with doubts about aliases, it's a good sign that you're understanding the whole concept of SQL. Any more questions before we go to the last section?
No.
Okay, now I will briefly explain you guys how to create tables. Until now, we have only been manipulating these tables, which are the most important part. That's why I wanted to start with it, but you also should know how to create a table. It's really similar, but the difference is when you are creating a table, you really have to think about each column and each data type that you are going to use. So for every data table that you create, be sure to have a primary key in this data table so you don't have duplicate results in this table. Explicitly say what columns cannot have new values. So your primary key column should never have a blank result, should never have a new result. So you should also explain it for SQL. And now that you already know SQL, creating tables will look like easy. So we will create now a table called cars. When we are talking about the Uber business, besides knowing the driver, the passenger, and the trip, I also need to know what car they are driving. That's how they distinguish between Uber Black and Uber X, for example. So we will create a table called cars, and in this table I will have car ID, which is an unique ID for every car. And think about it. If a driver sells this car for another person, I will keep the car ID and change the driver ID for this result. I will not create a new ID for this car because remember, foreigner keys, primary keys should never have duplicates. Okay, the second column will be the driver ID. So who is the driver driving this car? And again, if it changes, I keep the car ID and change the driver ID here. I will add make, which is the brand of the car, if it's Toyota, Renault, etc. I will add the model of the car, it's a Corolla, and then I will know what models are big or small. I'll have the year of the car, because it's really important for this business as well. I will have the license plate. One example here, if I wanted to use the license plate as primary key, instead of creating a car ID, I could use the license plate and not create a car ID. It would work. And I'm referencing here that the driver ID from this table is the same as the driver ID from table drivers. So SQL already know that these results are connected. Okay, just by running this command, we created a table. If I go to my data structure, I will see now my table created with the columns I nominated. But if I check this table, so select everything from cars, you can see that our table is empty because I have no results yet. How do I insert a result in the table? It's really simple. As you can see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns for this table, right? So I simply say insert into cars values, and then separated by commas, I need to have 6 results here. Enter, and if we select again our table, I already have one result there. That's this Toyota driven by driver 1. And to include the rest of them, I only have to run the commands. And as you can see, we now have a full table with cars for all our drivers. And I can also join results. Let's do another join here. I want to see the drivers and the driver name. I want to know exactly who is driving each car. So I know that Paul is driving the Toyota, Anna is riding the Renault, etc. And as you can see, there's one driver that's not showing up here. Let's again run select everything from drivers. I have 5 drivers, but our driver Pedro, besides not having any trips, he also didn't register a car. He registered itself as a driver in Uber, but he didn't register a car. That's why when I make an inner join combining my driver's name with the cars in the platform, Pedro doesn't show up because he doesn't have a car, and the inner join only selects the variables that are present in both tables. If I change here for the left join, you guys already know. Ah, Pedro didn't show up. Well, oh, because here I'm consuming from cars instead of drivers. It broke. Sorry, guys. I will fix this and give to you guys, but that's the logic. And I can also alter results. So if I want to alter a table, and besides the results that we already got, I want to add what is the energy type, if it's an electric car, if it's a hybrid car. I simply say update cars, set fuel type, and then I run it for every car. First, I have to add the column, sorry. So I'm saying here, to the table cars, alter it, adding a column with fuel type, and the fuel type is a text. And then I go adding one by one. As you see, I only added to car ID 1. All the others are null, and I only have this result for car 1. I update the rest, and if I run again, I will have this for my whole table. And now, besides the tables that we started the course with, that were only 3, we as well have the cars table to analyze in this database. Okay, guys, that was it for today. As I told you, do the exercises that are here in part 4. Check if you got the right results, comparing them to answers. I will make the alliances check that I didn't include in this first text here and upload it again to Canvas. Let me know any doubts that you have. I hope you enjoyed. I hope now, compared to 2 hours ago, you know much more about SQL and that you keep learning SQL until the day that you die.
There's two more questions. Can you show where we created the tables?
Yeah,
So the insert into,
here. So we create the table like this, and we insert values like this.
so first you create a table with the components, and then you insert the values. So
Yeah.
that's, we got two questions on that. And last question is, what does the name of the table dot name do? Example, cars dot name.
Okay, so when you are making a join, you need to specify to SQL in each watch table this information is contained. So here, when I have driver's name, I'm explaining to SQL. Inside the driver's table, I want the column name. Inside the cars table, I want the column model. Inside the cars table, I want the column year. So that's how you do this, and you can make the join combining one result from each table. So let's make a join here. Select drivers dot name. So wait, from select cars model from. Now this one is the one not working. It's as we did on the joins. Let me go back here. Here. So select driver's name, rides fare, rides city, from tables rides and drivers. And then I have the results. What this table name is doing before the column, it's explaining to SQL where to find this information.
And one last question from Cece. What does a number like 1, comma 1 mean in the insert? When you insert the data into the table, there are numbers like 1, 1, 2, 2.
Oh, these are referring to the columns I have in the table. So when we created the cars table, I explained that the first two columns are car ID and driver ID. So I'm inserting a whole new row here, and I'm explaining car ID should be 1, driver ID should be 1, and he drives a Toyota as make. So the
Okay.
numbers here are exactly the results SQL should add in each of these columns in the exact order. So 3 here, it's the first number because it's related to car ID. If I change here, for example, with and put car ID 3 and driver ID 1, I would be changing who is driving this car.
Yeah. So the numbers are technically just ID numbers,
Exactly.
not something different.
Any more questions?
Somebody says it isn't working for me, inserting the data. I just say double check that you have all the syntax is the same and that you have run the data, the table, create table, and make sure your semicolons are placed in the right place.
Yeah, and that you have commas after all the columns that you are creating here. Many of the mistakes come here. You can also send to us after the workshop, check AI. It's really good here to help you guys learn where you're making the mistakes.
We will update the text so you guys can use it again. And you can also ask your question on the discussion board that should be available right now as well. And as soon as we're finished, we'll try to ASAP post this workshop as well on Canvas. So you guys will be able to see that.
Yeah, and we are finishing grading your assignments as well, guys. So soon you'll have these results uploaded in Canvas as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for attending, and hopefully you learned something new today.
Bye, guys. Have a good day.